Hello, Patrick Foley here from Longwater Tai Chi, and welcome to another Stay Connected video. What I'd like to talk about today is the phases of the stance. This is a kind of intermediate subject, but I think now that you've got time to practice, this would be a good thing to integrate in from the earlier videos that I did about the 5 words of self-composure and the standing posture, or within any other Tai Chi posture of the form, and also the properties of the stance, how we construct a bow stance out of the angle of the foot, the direction you're facing, etc. Okay. Now, once we've established the properties of the stance, and you need to do that practice first, we need to have a little look at a much deeper philosophy, if you like, of Taijiquan, the hand form, and that is the interaction of yin and yang. Okay, yin and yang make up the core of Tai Chi movement. Without yin and yang correctly played out as you go through the form, there is no Tai Chi Chuan. So one of the things that you need to appreciate is that when we are not moving, when we are still, or when we have the intent to move, we are in a state of what's called Tai Chi. Tai Chi is the state, is the mother of yin and yang. There's been no separation between, there's no opposites existing in the world yet. And then as we start to move, we have yin and yang taking place. And once we have yin and yang, we have energy, but we also have an interaction between yin and yang. How do we go from the state of yin to the state of yang? And in the Massage Internal Arts method, which is what we're all studying, there is an explanation of how we interact with yin and yang through the phases of the stance. Now, hopefully you'll see a diagram come up at some point which will show you that actually the interaction of yin and yang could be seen as a cyclic process. We go through the phases of movement from yang to yin, back to yang, and all of that occurs in a cyclic way. I've got several diagrams which hopefully one of them will gel with you and help you understand how this works. And at the end of this video, I will put all these diagrams up at full size so that you can freeze frame and study them a little bit more clearly. But in a moment, we're going to have to actually have a look at how we use the bow stance or the horse stance to interact with this yin-yang cycle. But first of all, if you have a look at the diagram, you'll see that there are 5 distinct phases that we go through to complete a cycle. And that is from what's called Tai Yang, the maximum we can go in our structure, to Yin, to Tai Yin, which is the most settled, neutral, if you like, place that we can go in our structure. And then from Tai Yin to Yang and back into Tai Yang. So the 5 phases are Tai Yang to Yin, to Tai Yin, to Yang, to Tai Yang. Okay, so let's have a look now at how this works within the stance. And a lot of you would have played with this idea already in our classes, so hopefully it won't be new to you. But if it is new to you, then you really want to start thinking about playing with this, if you feel that you're ready for it. Especially if you've already done some of the 5 words of self-composure work, and you've also studied the properties of the stance to some degree. Okay, so we can see here that I'm in a horse stance. That's my feet are parallel and at least shoulder width apart, and I'm sunk into my legs a little bit to support this wider structure. Now, this is the first place where you can really explore how Tai Yin and Tai Yang and Yin Yang work. And we talk about this a lot in our warm-ups, in the Tai Chi Qigong warm-ups, as pushing a punt across the water. And so this is clearly seen as I take my weight to one side here, and then I release out of this side, and then I settle towards the middle, and then I drive out of the other side to come to the opposite. So this is the driving leg is a bit like the punt pole. The pole is released out of the water and gathered and then put back in, touching the riverbed, and then driving. So here we have Tai-yang to Yin to Tai-Yin to Yang to Tai-Yang. And what you want to notice here before we go into the bow stance is the quality of each of these phases. When I'm in Tai-Yang like this, I am fully driven to one side. Everything is weighted on the rooted leg, on the heavy leg. Now, in order to start the process of going from here into Tai-Yin and then back to Tai-Yang on the other side, the first thing I have to do is release out of this weighted leg here. And the easy way to see this is if you think about this unweighted knee just relaxing a little bit hard to see on the video, but it just relaxes a little bit. So actually I do nothing, I just let go from my extreme posture here. I let go a little bit and I start to already move off this leg. Then, now I already settle, both legs start to equal out. And this settling process takes me to the middle-ish, roughly in the middle. Then I have the intent to activate the leg I've just come out of. And I start to feel how it can start to drive my action into the opposite side. And when I get that connection, I drive through, taking my weight fully to the other side, and now I have completed the process. So relax and let go is from Tai-Yang to Yin. Settle towards the center, which has a little bit more intent involved with it. This is Yin to Tai-Yin. And now coming out of that settling, feeling for a place where I can connect with my driving leg. This is Tai-Yin to Yang. And now feeling that I've got this driving energy behind me, I can push through and come through to the other side. And this is Yang to Tai-Yang. So Tai-Yang to Yin, we're letting go. Yin to Tai-Yin, settling. Tai-Yin to Yang, finding the intent to drive, and then Yang to Tai-Yang, driving through to the other side. Now, you'll notice that when I'm in a horse stance, this movement occurs without any turning of the hips. But if I take a bow stance now, you will see that I have, if you remember we talked about this in class, I have a hip track. So when I'm going from one leg to the other, my hips are always trying to resolve into the direction of the weighted leg that I'm coming into. So this is called the hip track. The rest of my torso is not disturbed by this action. But within this stance construct, there is the phases of the stance. When I'm 70 or 80% weighted forward in my standard bow stance, I now need to go through the phases of the stance in order to come into my back leg along the hip track. So here I'm in Tai-Yang, and now what I'm going to do is release that drive out of the back leg, that straightening of the back leg, just allowing the knee to relax and come forward slightly. But now within the context of being in the hip track, it causes me to turn very slightly. So I now go from Tai-Yang to Yin, just off the front foot now. settle a little bit more intentfully now, looking for that place where I can just be quiet and still, what they call central equilibrium. This is towards the middle of the stance, and this is now Taiyin. But now my intent takes over, and I have the desire to move to the other leg, and I start to feel for a connection with what will now become my back leg, if you like. And that starts to drive me into the yang phase of the stance. And then finally, I feel that driving power, my hip tract continues to turn, and I come into Tai Yang. Tai Yang to Yin, to Tai Yin, to Yang, to Tai Yang. Drive. Tai Yang, to Yin, release, to Tai Yin, settle, central equilibrium. Find a connection, have the intent, to Yang, to Tai Yang, to Yin, to Tai Yin, to Yang, to Tai Yang. One more time. To Tai Yang, to Yin, to Tai Yin, to Yang, to Tai Yang. And if you have a look at the diagrams that I'm putting up, you will see how this is a cyclic movement. It's a continuous circular movement traveling through the phases of the stance. And it replicates, in a way, the Tai Chi 2 or the Tai Chi diagram, which you will also see in the graphics that I'm putting up. There can be no Yang without Yin. There can be no Yin without Yang. When there is no Yin and Yang, we are still. We are in Tai Chi. As soon as we energize and mobilize our Qi and come into movement, we introduce Yang and Yin. So through all our Tai Chi movement, there's always an intentful action happening in both legs. Okay, we never drift in the movement. Okay, if we don't use the qualities of yin, yang and the phases of the stances when we're moving, what we tend to do when we're going through our Tai Chi movements is we're just drifting in the legs. We're making movements and we're not really focusing on how these movements are originating out of the legs. There is just this kind of drifty action going on. Okay, drifty action. And what we really want to get into with our Tai Chi is the quality that each movement is created out of this interaction of yin and yang. Tai Yang to yin, to Tai Yin, to yang, to Tai Yang. Every movement has this driving quality in it. Even in these back empty stances, there is a way that we can find to express the phases of the stance. So here, even here, settling, then driving. Releasing, settling, driving. Even without a weight change, the qualities of Tai Yin and Tai Yang are present throughout the form. I hope you found that useful. As I said, the images that I'm using with this video will come up at the end of the video, full screen, so you can use your pause button and you can have a little look at them, and hopefully they will explain a little bit more about how the phases of this dance work. Thank you very much, and speak to you again soon.